Hello, and welcome to Book 3, Chapter 17 of You Should Be Reading. This week, I'd like to talk to you about The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. Now, this is one of his books that is very touted and held up in high regard. The first one I've ever read of his was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep back in book 2. This is my second book of his, and I kind of went from one of the easiest books of his to read to one of the hardest. Now, I'm going to say right off the bat that this book is, I'm not going to say it's a hard one to figure out whether to really recommend it or not. I mean, I do recommend it, but there's a caveat with it. So I'll put that at the front of this right now before I start delving into anything. Um, personally, personally, I am glad that I read this book, but I can't say that it was an enjoyable book to read. Um, it dealt with a lot of issues, such as, I mean, considering that this book is all about the fact that Nazi Germany and Japan won the war and ended up conquering the United States and dividing it. Um, there's rampant racism, um, cultural differences, cultural shock going on with some of the characters. There's a lot of hatred and underlying, negative feelings just pervading the book, simply in the characters themselves. Um, I'm not saying it has anything to do with the author. I'm sure it doesn't, because his other book that I read didn't really have that. It's all very much tied up in the story that is being offered here, but it's it's one of those things. So the way the way in which um, this particular book goes around, there's several characters involved, and it jumps back and forth between the viewpoints of those characters. Um, it's definitely interesting. It definitely has educational value because it does delve into uh, a lot of a lot of things that many people would rather turn their eyes away from. It deals with the racism, with the way the Nazis were. Um, it deals with the Japanese class system and their concept of having a place in society and being able to lose that place, as well as lose face and that sort of thing. It's very strange, very strange indeed. Um, so yeah, I don't know if I would recommend it uh, because of I don't think like if you read the synopsis um, on the back, it says right here, it's America in 1962. Slavery is legal once again. The few Jews who still survive hide under assumed names. In San Francisco, the I Ching is as common as the Yellow Pages, all because some 20 years earlier, the United States lost a war and is now occupied by Nazi Germany and Japan. So yeah, it's kind of science fictiony. There's a little bit of spiritual element, especially with the I Ching, who some of them call the Oracle. It seems to be able to predict the future almost indefinitely. Um, there's a book in it that a man has written where hypothetically the U.S. won the war and Nazi Germany was defeated, and how things went from there. It's strange. So it's kind of a meta narrative in a way. Um, and like I said, I can't say that I particularly enjoyed reading it, but I am glad I spent the time to read it because otherwise it would have been something that I had never read, had never considered. There's viewpoints in here that are brought up that my mind, like most people, I don't try and consider those points of view, but one should because that is what's known as an open mind. You need to keep that open mind. You don't have to believe in other viewpoints, but you still have to consider them. And this gives those type of viewpoints full consideration. So it's definitely worth the time to read if you're interested in this sort of thing. Uh, See, I can't say that I wholeheartedly recommend it. This is the sort of thing you definitely have to decide for yourself. I definitely would not recommend this to anyone in perhaps high school, or although maybe you should. I don't know. All I know is right now I've read it and I'm glad I waited this long to do it. I don't know as I would ever read it again. It's not that sort of book, at least not to me. I usually read books for entertainment, and as entertainment, this doesn't really fall into that category. Uh, the Randall Munroe's What If was actually more entertaining to me than The Man in the High Castle, but it did teach me something, and that is almost as important, possibly even more important than being merely entertained by a book. If a book can entertain you and teach you something, all the better. But for now, yeah, it's a weird book. So I will kind of leave it at that because I don't want to go into too much detail because I might spoil the story. And for those of you who haven't read it and are planning on, I don't want to do that. So I will leave that here. As always, feel free to tap that like button if you like the videos I'm putting up. Give the subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of any new videos I put out. Usually try and get out something once a week if possible. And throw some comments in the comment section if you read The Man in the High Castle, which is apparently an Amazon original series now. I haven't watched that. Don't know if I'm going to. Um, but yeah, throw the throw some comments in there. Have you read any Philip K. Dick? Any other stuff? Any suggestions you think I should read of his? So yes, I will leave it at that. And this week, this week, you should be reading The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick, but only if you really want to. I'm not pushing it. I'm not pushing it. So yeah, for now, you all take care, and I will see you next week.